Backpacker Shop, everybody. My name's Adam. I am one of the hosts of Keep Talking. I run the show with my partner, Zachariah Durr. We've been doing the show for about 6 years. I think it'll be in January. Have any of you been to the show before? A couple hands? Okay, well, if you are new, welcome. We do this show the first Wednesday of every month at the Happy Dog in the Gordon Arts Square District in Cleveland. It's a lot of fun. Basically, what you're going to hear tonight are 5 true scary stories. And since we're teaming up with Mappy Hour and at the Backpacker Shop, they're all going to have to do somehow with the outdoors. Now, we only have a couple rules. 1, the stories have to be true, okay? Nothing fictional. This isn't going to be a poetry reading or anything like that. The stories have to connect to the theme in some way. We keep them vague on purpose. And 3, it has to be a story that has happened to the storyteller telling it, okay? These are not stories that they heard from their grandpa about the war or anything like that. This is something they experienced firsthand. It's going to be a lot of fun. You are all very friendly looking as individuals, but in a dark cabin that looks haunted here right now, you're a little intimidating. And we do have one person that's never done this before, so please keep your talking to a minimum and have a lot of fun. If something's funny, laugh. If you want to clap or groan or whatever, just have fun with it. We're drinking beer for free. It's great. What do you guys say? Does that sound good? Excellent. Oh, I love the energy. By the way, Josh is such a good marketer because he was like, Adam, get here early to help set up. And he didn't need my help setting up. He just wanted my shopping list to grow exponentially because now I need every walking stick that this store has. But with that out of the way, let's get our first storyteller up. It's his first time at Keep Talking, but he's done a couple storytelling shows before. It's Anthony Zart, everybody. Welcome, Anthony. Come on up, buddy.
There you go. Hello, everybody. How's it going?
Yeah.
All right, so about 8 years ago, I was in kind of a rut, and I didn't really know what I was doing with my job, with, personal life, just trying to figure things out. And my uncle is, for all intents and purposes, an honorary herpetologist, which, if you don't know what that is, that's reptile science. It has nothing to do with what else you might think it is. But he goes to Costa Rica at least once a year, and he's like, dude, you got to come with me. We'll go snake hunting. And again, to clarify, snake hunting for him is like aggressive bird watching. There's no killing. It's all like catch, release, photos and all that. So I was like, you know what? This sounds like the break I need. I'm going to go to Costa Rica for 10 days. I'm going to snake hunt in the jungle. I'm going to do this. I'm going to get out of my comfort zone. I've never done anything like this before. And also, to boot, I'm a little bit scared of snakes. I won't leave a room if one's in there, but if one comes by me, I would freak out. So I'm like, I'm going to do this. I'm going to say yes to everything. I'm going to say yes to snakes, food, jungle, mosquitoes, doesn't matter. So we go, and for the first 5 days, it's pretty standard. We're literally hacking through the jungle on trails with a machete, lifting up leaves, trying to find deadly and not deadly snakes. And it's going pretty well. And I'm learning a lot. I'm terrified because sometimes you'll lift up a palm frond and there's, a rattlesnake or an eyelash viper and holy shit, But for the most part, I'm getting past it. I'm doing well. And at the 6th night, we get an offer from his friend down there, Miguel. He goes, I know that you're looking for the Bushmaster. And the Bushmaster, if you don't know, is the deadliest snake in the Western Hemisphere. And he goes, I know you're looking for it. You can find it at the top of this inactive volcano, usually at night. So my uncle turns to me and goes, what do you think, dude? I'm like, let's go hike an inactive volcano at night to find the deadliest snake in the Western Hemisphere. So the plan originally was that we would set out at dusk, get to the mountain for all intents and purposes, hike it, and then hike down actually at night because we would find it one way or the other. But we would be out of there by official nighttime. With the way that things work in Costa Rica, with the way that things work just with traffic, we pick up Miguel and his nephew Ramon. We don't get to the field that leads up to this thing until it's well past dusk. So we hike a mile in. We're lifting up leaves and boulders the whole way. I'm finding, wolf spiders about this big. I mean, it's an experience. We don't hit the summit until it's already dark outside. By the time we actually enter to walk in up the volcano, it's pitch black. It immediately starts thunderstorming. So we're hiking up this trail, which I should also clarify, the trail isn't really a trail. We kind of went the back way, and it's like mud steps that are dug out pretty much just by roots. So you're like grabbing and hoisting yourself up like 3 feet just to get up the next step. So it's an endurance trial as it is. Meanwhile, you're flipping things over looking for something deadly. Now, again, I'm going to clarify that the Bushmaster is about as thick as my arm and about 7 to 10 feet long. And this is what we're looking for at night in a thunderstorm. So we're not having any luck because of the torrential downpours. The water is literally like cascading down these steps. So at one point, we're going up, and I hear this, and I'm like, Miguel, do you know what that is? And he's like, oh, I think it's a puma. And I'm like, really? And you can hear it like in the bushes, and I'm like, okay, well, great. Well, it seems to be following us. He's like, yes, I know. And I'm like, that's not great. And then I hear on the other side, and he goes, oh, I think she brought a sister. And I'm like, no, while we're hiking up this thing, going through the waterfall, we're being followed by 2 pumas. So that's fantastic. So we're going up. It's been like an hour. I turn and I'm like, how much longer? Like, how far do you think we are? He's like, oh, I think we're about halfway. We are only halfway up this thing. We're soaked to the bone. And there's a moment where you have like stages of like self-preservation, where initially when we got to the summit of the volcano, I was like, I just want to get up. I want to get a photograph for my uncle. I want to get back down. Hopefully I don't get bit by whatever this thing is. Then once it started raining, I was like, I hope I can at least keep the camera dry. And then when he told me, like, we're only halfway and you still got another hour to walk up this thing, I was like, you know what? I just want to get home. I don't care if I get bit. I don't care if I'm wet. I don't give a shit about this camera. I just want to get out of here. So we finally reach the summit. It immediately stops raining. So then we decide that it's a great idea to go completely around the bowl. And we are literally, again, off trail, just hacking with a machete, knee deep in water, still not finding anything. It's like going through a haunted house where like every turn you're like, something there? No, nothing's there. Nothing's there. You're fine. So we start coming down the volcano. And it's this point that we actually start finding snakes. We find first a jumping pit viper, which is about as scary as it sounds. But again, at this point, I'm kind of acclimated to the snakes. Now, the next snake that we find is a fer-de-lance. Now, if you don't know what that is, that's the second deadliest snake in the Western Hemisphere. Now, I've earned a respect and a patience for snakes at this point, except for the fer-de-lance. The fer-de-lance is like the velociraptor of snakes. It's incredibly alert and aware, and if you pick that thing up or you even approach it, it's just watching your every move. It knows exactly what you're doing. The other snakes could care less whether you bother him or not. Now, my uncle is a big guy, weight lifts 250. He's fearless. He's got this thing on a hook, which he deems is a safe distance. I'm standing 10 feet back taking pictures, what I think is a safe distance. I look behind me. Miguel and Ramon are 30 feet back going, you're an idiot. Like, that thing's deadly. Because the problem is if that thing bites you, it's a necrotic bite, which means your skin starts to rot before you die. So even if he got tagged and we could bring him to safety, we're half a mile down a mountain plus 2 miles from the car, which is an additional 2 miles from civilization. So we're just like, please just put the fer-de-lance down. So we get down the mountain. We find 2 more snakes. I get bit by a red ant. That's not that scary. But we make it back to the car, and this is after fending off additional tarantulas and other spiders from lifting up things that just happened to be there. We finally get back, and I'm standing at the car, and I'm just covered head to toe in water and mud and cuts, and I'm like, you know what, man? Like, I did it. Like, I fucking scaled it. We didn't find a Bushmaster, by the way. No Bushmasters. But I'm like, I did it. Like, I scaled this volcano at night. Like, I came out the other side. Like, I did it. Like, I'm a hard ass. Like, I got out of my shell. And I turn around, and I look at Ramon, Miguel's nephew, who I realize has done this whole thing in flip-flops with a cell phone, breaking up with his girlfriend the entire time. And I'm like, all right. And that's my story going to Costa Rica.
I mean, flip-flops are pretty badass. So one more time for Anthony, everybody. First time at Keep Talking. Thanks for doing it, man. That was great. In case you were wondering, how we booked this show was we put a call out, we do this on every show, to social media saying, hey, if you're interested in telling a story, submit. We're always looking for new storytellers, so if you think you have something, consider submitting sometime. You can find all the information on facebook.com/keeptalkingcle. With that out of the way, are we ready for our next storyteller, ladies and gentlemen? Excellent. He is someone that's been on Keep Talking twice with 2 different stories. I'm so glad we could have him back tonight. You're going to love him. It's David Fern, everybody. Welcome, David. Come on up, man.
Thank you. Glad to be here doing this. I've told this story once before. I'll tell it again. I'm a member of Cleveland Out and About, which is an LGBT outdoor organization in Northeast Ohio. One of our, probably our biggest event of the year is a canoe trip on Camp High down by Hiram. And this story goes back 5-6 years ago. We got there, typical. I wasn't leading the event, so I was just there to have fun. The leader said, David, will you be the sweeper and be in the back, make sure everybody's okay, make sure everybody gets back to delivery okay. I said, sure, what could go wrong? And everybody got in their canoes and kayaks. Some people had single kayaks, some people had double kayaks, some people had canoes. There was a young female couple, and you could immediately tell they were a couple, and you could immediately tell they wanted to kind of stage in the relationship. They wanted to do everything together, wanted to be around each other all the time. So they got in one of the canoes. And we all started out down the river. There was like 10 or 12 different boats going down the river. Immediately, you could tell that the young ladies did not know what they were doing. They were, sometimes if you're a beginning paddler, you rely on power. So they were just powering, not coordinating. So they would go over to the left bank of the river, then go to the right bank, then go back to the left bank, then go back to the right bank. And meanwhile, everybody was getting way ahead of us. And meanwhile, they started yelling at each other. So at that point, I knew they weren't that new of a couple because they were comfortable like cussing each other out. And so I was trying to I was in a single kayak. I was trying to help them. Okay, this is what you need to do to at least get us back where we need to go before tomorrow, because they were like really struggling. And eventually, I got them where they were moving at a decent pace. I was still worried about how long it would take us to get back. Well, as soon as that happened, it started to rain. And as soon as it started to rain, a few minutes later, it started to thunder and lightning. And it was really coming down. And I said, well, metal canoe on the river with lightning is probably not a good idea. So we pulled over. I said, let's pull over to the side of this farmer's field here. There's a farmer's field off on the bank. Let's pull over there for a while, don't get under any trees or anything, but make sure that we ride this out a little bit. And eventually, maybe a half hour later, in the meantime, we got totally drenched. Half hour later, it was sufficiently dry that I said, well, let's head out. But then it hit me, hey, what if I let the one young lady that seemed to be a little better paddling take the kayak, and I get in the canoe with the other lady. And then that way I'd have some control over the situation and we'd be able to hopefully get back. So we did that, and the young lady in the kayak did very well, and she was out like a shot ahead of us. So it was just me and the other young lady in the canoe. So we keep going, and we're doing our thing. And if you ever have done the run at Camp High, there's a giant rock in the middle of the river. Everybody knows where it is. As soon as it's about maybe a mile, half a mile from the livery when you get back to livery. So I'm concentrating on doing my stuff in the back of the canoe. She's in the front. She neglects to tell me that we're heading right for the rock. And all of a sudden, I hear a boom. The canoe goes on its side, turns over, and then the river, which was running pretty high, was just rushing into this canoe. And we lost some of our paddles, we lost some of our PDFs, personal flotation devices, and it was about up to my waist. And I get out and try to dislodge this canoe, which was impossible because the water was just coming into it at such a great clip that I could not dislodge this canoe at all. It would not budge. So the option was we're going to get out and walk back the mile to the canoe livery. And that was probably the dumbest idea that I've ever had because we get out, and first of all, we're as wet as possible. You couldn't get any more wet. And you know how wearing wet clothes is just totally miserable. So I had my shirt off, I had my socks off, I was going in bare feet because everything was just completely drenched. And we got what we could. We got like one paddle out. We got what we could out, and we're walking. We said, let's walk. So we start walking down the road. And let me give a meanwhile in there. Meanwhile, there were canoers behind us that reported there was a tipped canoe and nobody around it in the river. So the girlfriend, the one girlfriend that made it all the way back, she was, of course, in a panic. What happened? What happened? Where are they? What happened? So they sent out, not the police, but everyone who came out looking for us went all around, where are they? Where are they? Where are they? And in my infinite wisdom, we had taken the wrong road. It was like a V shape, and we went left. We should have went right. So we were like going way out of our way, out in the country, walking down the road with a shirt off, totally drenched, with paddles, and eventually, it took a while, but eventually, a farmer came by in a truck and took pity on us. So we got in the back of the truck, and he took us all the way back to the canoe livery. And by that time, everybody else had gone. And the one girlfriend was there, and the one leader was there. There was a couple people left. They were all gone. And so we got back, and I just basically collapsed, there for a while. Went home and collapsed. And the upshot of the story is we never saw that young couple again. And I don't want to lay odds on if they're still a couple to this day or not after that experience. But so I had many lessons that I learned that day. First, never let people get in a canoe or kayak that have never done it before and don't know what they're doing. And then never be a sweeper. So I've lived up to that, and I've never done that again. Said no way. And I'm just here to have fun. Any other kayak canoe trips we've taken, I'm just there to have fun. Thank you.
I love that story. David Byrne, everybody, let him hear it. Putting up with that. Oh, you want to test a relationship? Get in a canoe. Oh yeah, see how rocky it is. Folks, again, if you are interested in being on the show in the future, find us on Facebook. We're always looking for new storytellers. Speaking of new storytellers, folks, the one coming up next is a first-timer, so let's get some hype up for that. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the stage. It's Alana. Come on up, Alana.
Thanks. Hi, everybody. So I've always been fairly outdoorsy. I did a lot of camping and hiking and stuff when I was a kid, but it wasn't until 2016 that I kind of combined the two and started doing backpacking. So in June of that year, I went on my first backpacking trip. It was a group trip with some friends, and it was fantastic. We had beautiful weather. We had great scenery. Everything was great. I loved it. So when I got invited to another backpacking trip from the same group later that year in November, this time at Shawnee State Park down in Southern Ohio, I was like, yeah, sign me up. So being fall, obviously, in Ohio, weather can be sketchy. So we were keeping a close eye on the forecast and everything. And it actually looked really nice for November. It was going to be sunny, clear. So I just kind of packed my 3-season bag and my, a couple extra clothes and just figured I'd make do with that. So the first day goes totally great. We did kind of get a little bit lost, but that's okay. We found our way and we made it to our first campsite, which we ended up sharing with a group of Army guys from Wright-Patterson Air Force Base, who were kind enough to share their campfire and their booze with us. Probably had a little bit to do with the fact that we were a group of ladies, but... So anyway... they do tell us a really, really freaky thing that happened to them when they were hiking in. So earlier that day, when they were hiking into their campsite, they encountered a pack of wild dogs in the woods that were snarling and chased them. Little unnerving, right? So anyway, though, we're drinking and having a good time and everything, and kind of, like in one ear and out the other. So next day, we get up, and 3 of us say goodbye to the rest of our friends. The rest of our friends had to leave, go back to work or whatever, like that, losers. So we ended up keeping on to the next group, or to the next campsite, and everything went fine. Beautiful day, great scenery. We get to our campsite, and it is absolutely gorgeous. Just like, we get there in late afternoon, and it's like golden hour, and there's like sunshine filtering in through the trees and stuff, and it's perched on the edge of a little ravine that has a creek running through it, and it's just absolutely stunning. So we're pretty stoked. We set up our campsite, and as we're doing so, we're setting up our tents and stuff. The woman who organized the group trip mentioned what the place is called. It's called Dead Man's Hollow. Okay? And I'm like, what? You didn't tell us this until now? So unfortunately, she doesn't know why it's called Dead Man's Hollow. And I'm like totally creeped out. Like, I want to know why. But of course, we're in the woods and we can't look up, like, we don't have cell service or anything like that. So anyway, so we build a fire and we're hanging out and stuff like that. And eventually we end up heading to our separate backpacking tents and everything to go to sleep for the night. And I wake up in the middle of the night, sometime later, shaking. It is so cold, like so cold. I shivered myself awake. But more importantly, I hear dogs barking in the woods, disturbingly close to our campsite, like on the other side of this ravine close. And I'm like, holy shit, the wild dogs these guys warned us about. And I am like just shaking in my tent, like, oh my God, I'm gonna get eaten alive by wild dogs tonight. This is how I die. They don't actually get any closer, and eventually they kind of stop barking. So I somehow managed to doze back off. And then I woke up a second time, sometime later, to an even scarier sound. So I can't even describe the sound, but it's just echoing through the woods, and it sounds like people screaming. And it's coming from like all directions, and it's just so eerie. And then there's dogs barking off in the distance too. And I'm like sitting alone in my tent, shaking, freezing to death, like trying not to pee myself. Because I'm like, I'm either gonna die today from freezing to death, I'm gonna die from dogs ripping me apart in the middle of the night, or I'm going to die from whatever the hell is in the woods making this awful noise. So somehow, eventually, I end up falling back asleep. That half sleeping, half awake state that can only be like marginally described as sleep. But I wake up in the morning and my sleeping bag and my inside of my tent are both covered in a thin layer of frost. This is so not what you want when you're camping. And I'm like, oh my God. And nobody else in my group seems like super unnerved by this. We're all a little bit like, what the hell was that? But whatever, it's time to go, So we pack up our tents and everything, and we start heading back to the cars, and we hike out, and we're all like super sleep deprived from this night and everything, but we make it back okay. So we get in the cars, and we're driving out, and as soon as we hit civilization and actually get cell phone signals, the first thing I look up is the weather. Like, how cold did it get that night? 19 degrees. 19. And I am camping in my 3-season sleeping bag in like a pair of cheapo leggings that I picked up on a clearance rack at Target. Okay, no wonder I'm freezing. Second thing we look up is, why is this place called Dead Man's Hollow? So legend goes, apparently a peddler in the 1800s died in the hollow. His bones were found sometime later, and ever since then, the sounds of screams are heard in the woods at night. Yeah, they sure are. But of course, we're skeptical, and we're like, well, it can possibly be a ghost, right? So we're like trying to figure out, the third thing we're looking up is, what could this possibly have been? And my friend suggests coyotes. So we look up like coyote noises, not a single coyote howling, but like, groups of coyotes. And so did you guys know that coyotes can actually sound like humans screaming in the night? Well, they can, which I learned that night in Dead Man's Hollow, also known as the scariest night of my life. That's it.
Alana Westfall, everybody. Let her hear it. Her first time. That takes guts. It's a real roll of the dice looking up names. I grew up in Medina, and like one of the nicest areas of Medina is a place called River Styx. And I'm like, God, River Styx, what a beautiful area. Until I was a junior in high school and read Dante's Inferno. And the River Styx is a river in hell. So that's nice. Very pleasant. Fun fact too, Medina is actually Native American for white people. Who knew? Anyways, are we ready for our next storyteller, ladies and gentlemen? Great. He's someone that has also been on the show. We're so happy to have him back. Please welcome to the stage Matt Hansen, everybody. Come on up, Matt.
Hey, guys. Two things before we start. Anthony's my neighbor. I live across the street from him, and we found out we were doing this just last night, so that's cool. And then as I've been sitting listening to stories, I love, even in adulthood, the front row is not the cool place to sit. No one's sitting in the front 2 rows. So, for many years, me and a select group of friends had a annual tradition of doing a ski trip every year after Christmas, go for about 5 to 7 days, and we would pick a new place to go. And one year we decided to go to one of the bucket list places to ski before you die. It's called Mont Tremblant. It's in Quebec, Canada. It's great. And being the industrious boys that we were, we didn't want to pay for lodging. So to save on that expense, we decided to bring with us our newly acquired pop-up camper. I say acquired because I don't think it was paid for. I think it was in such disrepair that it was just given to us, and we sort of patched it up and got it in a good enough state. So we hitched that pop-up camper to my Volkswagen station wagon and drove it up to Canada. But before we did, we had to get all the supplies and get everything ready for the trip. This same group of friends, we also did a lot of backpacking trips. Most of the time it was in Allegheny National Forest, which is a fantastic place to backpack if you've never been there before. But the thing about these friends and those trips was that I am not a complete backpacker on my own. I'm something of a backpacker in law, because I need these guys with me to have all their gear that they've paid for, because I don't want to pay for the expensive stuff. They've got the great expensive gear and all that kind of stuff. So because it was the holidays and because things get kind of hectic, this particular planning for this particular trip got a little last minute, and I needed a sleeping bag. And we're going to be in Canada in late December in a pop-up camper, so it's got to be pretty good. And my best friend, Joey, we've known each other since we were 8 years old. He goes, Matt, I got you. I got a sleeping bag for myself that's rated for 60 below. You can have mine that's rated for negative 40. You'll be good to go. Let's go ahead. So I was like, great, let's go. So we hit the road. We make it to the Canadian border. We hand over all of our passports to the guy at the booth. And he says, where are you going? And I enthusiastically say, we're going skiing. Apparently, he wanted to know where in Canada we were going, and I didn't realize that at the time, so we told him we were going to Quebec. And then he says, what's the pop-up camper for? Which, in retrospect, is still a stupid question when I think back on it. And I gave him what at the time I felt was an equally stupid answer of sleeping. And he seemed somewhat embarrassed by the fact that I had such a simple answer and just handed stuff and off we went. We made it to the resort at about 2 or 3 in the morning, found our parking lot, and just set up camp. Sorry, but before we did that, after we made it across the border, we stopped at duty free, as you do. We bought a few bottles of Canadian whiskey. We had already packed pipe tobacco and pipes, but we bought some White Owl cigars, which are cigar in name only. They're sort of just like tobacco-flavored paper rolled into cylinders, but it was going to do the trick. And while we were skiing, we had a couple supplies. Like I said, we had the whiskey and the pipe tobacco already, but a buddy of mine made the absolute best homemade beef jerky you've ever had in your life. And with being in Canada in December, skiing. It's really dry. You're exerting yourself. We're drinking alcohol. We're smoking. We're drinking really salty food. It's kind of this perfect storm to completely dehydrate a human being. So I think it was about the third or fourth night, I wake up in the middle of the night just dying of thirst. And it's pitch black because we're just in a parking lot in the middle, of Canada. And so I feel around in the pitch black darkness of the camper for my Nalgene bottle, which was totally full of water. I could feel the weight. And I open it up and I tilt it back and nothing's coming out. And I tilt it back and I tilt it back and I tilt it back and nothing came out because the entire bottle was frozen solid. And that's like the air we're sleeping in. So I just decided, all right, I guess I can't drink any water. I'll try and go back to sleep. I woke up a second time, and this was a different kind of a wake up. This was not so much a you're thirsty wake up. This was, you should probably start moving your body or else you're probably going to die kind of a wake up because I was just absolutely freezing. So in the pitch black darkness, I grab what I can find and try to fit it on my body, whatever I can't manage to put on. I stuff in my sleeping bag, and this is a wrestling match for what I think is a couple hours because I'm kind of nodding off and waking up again because I'm too cold. And at about probably 5:30 in the morning, I say, you know what? There's so little time before we're going to wake up and go skiing again. I can just go out to my, Passat station wagon, let the car idle for an hour and just sleep in the warm car, and at least I'll have that and at least I won't die. When I got in the car and fired up fired the car up, the dash lit up and you've got all the gauges and everything, all of the displays. The temperature on the dashboard said negative 14 degrees. And I thought it's got to be like thinking back on it, I must have just been so dehydrated because my bag was rated for 40 below, but still negative 14. That's no picnic. So we ski for a few more days. The trip is fantastic. Tremblant is a cool town. It's like this little old village tacked to the side of the mountain. We had it a ball. But when we get back, for the first time in a week, we're able to fully undress for the first time and get a shower and sort of just do this inventory of the damage we had done to our bodies. And it's in this time that I notice that the middle left toenail is jet black with some bruising around it. So Joey, who lent me the negative 40 bag, his girlfriend at the time, now wife, is a nurse. And she said, Matt, I don't know for sure, but that looks a lot like frostbite. And what can happen is if you don't take care of it, it can become gangrenous and you might have to have it removed. So it's at this time, Joey feels like he's got to get a little something off his chest. He says, hey, Matt, you know how the trip, it got kind of hectic there at the end and we had to hurry up and get supplies? And I lent you that bag that I told you was rated for negative 40. It was rated for regular 40. So I'm really sorry if you lose your toe, because it's kind of my fault. So I make the appointment, and I'm legitimately worried about it, because it's just having anything removed isn't something that normally happens to a person. I mean, it happens, but just not normally. But then I get this idea of what my foot will look like if I have my toe removed, and that I decide if it happens, I'm gonna get a tattoo of an old-timey sign in an old-timey font with an arrow pointing where it used to be that says, "Gone to market." And I get so excited about this idea, I'm sort of rooting to lose the toe. I'm kind of I really hope this happens. And there really isn't a moral to this story. It's really just stupid guys doing stupid stuff. And but if there was one, it would be you could focus on the negatives of what shoulda, coulda happened and the negative aspects, or you could look on the bright side and use an excuse to get a new tattoo. Thank you.
Matt Hansen, everybody. He didn't lose a toe, but he gained a great story. I'm going to be your final storyteller. Does that sound good? Okay. My very first word was fish. I would stand at our fish tank and I would point and go ish, 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 which was way ahead of hip hop at the time. I feel like a trailblazer there. But part of the reason I was obsessed with fishing or fish was because of my dad. He was an avid fisherman, and he would take me along fishing even when I was a little tiny infant. And it is truly, I mean this, like my favorite thing to do. I love fishing, whether it's perch and walleye on the lake or bluegill in the pond that we have in our backyard. I love it. My dad really showed me the ropes growing up, and even now I'm 31. I was just perch fishing with him last weekend. He still ensures that I get the best rod with the best rig setup, that I get the best side of the boat. He wants to see me catch the fish. I love fishing with my dad, but he is 73, 74 now. And one thing that he introduced me to doing was river fishing. We would take our canoe, we would go down the Allegheny River, we would fish for smallmouth and pike. Super, super fun. But river fishing is kind of intense. It involves hiking down valleys sometimes and then hiking back up. If you're wading, slippery rocks. He's had a hip replacement. He's getting older. Unless we are out on his boat trolling for walleye, that's about what he does now. And when I first realized that I was going to be doing river fishing alone without him, it was kind of sad, but it also felt like, okay, I'm carrying on a tradition that he introduced me to, and that's kind of cool. Now, one of my favorite times to river fish is actually right now. It's for steelhead fishing. Does anybody here fish for steelhead? Couple, yeah, all right, cool. I am not very good. I use a spinning rod. I don't fly fish. But I've gotten good enough that I do know how to hook into them in a couple of really good spots on the Rocky River where I can fish for them. If you're not familiar with steelhead, they're basically really big rainbow trout that spend their summers in Lake Erie getting huge, gorging on emerald shiners and shad. And then beginning in the fall, they make their way up the rivers, Chagrin River, Rocky River, even the Cuyahoga, pretty much anywhere where there's water flowing into Lake Erie. And they'll be in there from fall, winter, into spring, right into April. And it's really a great time to catch these fish. They can get really big. They're beautiful. If you catch them at the right time and at the right size, they're actually decent table fare. But they're kind of hard to catch too. It's not really a beginner fish. Maybe you catch one by luck, but most of the time you don't. You look online, there's people that say I've gone 1, 2, maybe even 3 years without catching one. So there's a bit of a learning curve. I started to figure it out thanks to some friends and some advice I was getting from places like here at the Backpacker Shop. And I would post my catches online. They were always 1 or 2 fish here and there, but it was still pretty cool to share and kind of show off a little bit. Well, one day I get a Facebook friend request and a message from someone I'm not friends with, obviously. His name's Andrew. We'll call him Andrew. And Andrew is the older brother of one of my really close childhood friends, Hannah. And in his message, he says, Hannah showed me the pictures of the steelhead you were catching. I have been trying and trying to catch one, but I haven't had any luck, and I would really love it if you took me out sometime. Now, as close as I was with Hannah, I never met Andrew. He's about 3 years older than me. And even when I would go to Hannah's house, he was never around. We never crossed paths. I really don't know him at all. He's basically a stranger. But Hannah's really cool. She told me, yeah, he really wants you to do this. So living into my dad's spirit of making sure, kind of carrying it on, the tradition of, having people catch great fish, I was like, absolutely. I would love to take you. Let's pick a morning someday to go to the Rocky River. So fast forward to right about this time of year now. I forget what year, it was whatever year it was Obama was running for re-election. And I know that because it is 5 a.m. I drove up from Medina to Lakewood where Andrew lived. We get into Andrew's car because he had a Jeep and he didn't care if it got dirty or fishy or anything like that. And this is the first time we're meeting, and we drive our way down to the Rocky River. And one of the first things he asks me, again, this is the first person I've ever met, or the first time I ever met him. He said, "Are you voting for Obama?" And it's 5 a.m. It's pitch black. This is literally the first thing he brings up. And I don't give a shit. If he wants to break the rule of not talking about politics, let's break the rule. I'm like, yeah, I'm voting for Barack Obama. And he went, oh, thank God, because I am too. And the universal healthcare, it's just so important for me and Hannah and my family. Hannah has a rare liver condition that was really giving her some fits that year and the previous years before. So healthcare was something that they really, really cared about. Now, I knew that about Hannah, but Andrew just keeps going on about the importance of healthcare and how everybody should have it and how much they need it in the family. And he's really dragging on about how great Obama is. And I'm literally agreeing with everything he's saying, but it's 5 a.m. It's way too fucking early to talk about politics. I tune out. Tune out. We eventually, it's like a 5-minute drive, get down to the Rocky River. I direct him to the spot that we're going to go. And it's just a little pull-off, a little gravel lot, if you will. You can see the river right there. In fact, right at the parking lot, you can actually see the hole that I want to fish. And I said, we're going to park here, but we're actually going to walk upstream about 100 yards because at the hole, if we were just walk straight out, it's pretty steep drop. And then the hole itself is about 5.5 deep. It's kind of a deep hole. You can't really cross there. So we're going to walk up 100 yards to where it gets shallow. It's a little bit of a lower edge. We'll cross there and then walk back down to the hole. Andrew says, great. But as we're packing up our gear, he pulls out like a new iPhone. And he said, I forgot a case. I haven't gotten it yet. Or I forgot a plastic bag. Is it okay if I leave it in the car? Now, I was one of the few people at the time, part of the dying breed, that still had a flip phone. And I didn't care if it, was broken. And I took it out. I saw I had half of a battery. And I said, yeah, this is fine. And we're so close to the car anyways. If you really need it, it's a 5-minute walk. It won't be a big deal. So he says, great. He puts it in the glove box. And we start making our way 100 yards upriver, across the river, 100 yards down. We can see our car, but we're at the hole now. And the first thing I do is I bring out all of the little steelhead jigs I have, and I show him the rod and the setup we're going to have. And then I show him the current of the river and saying, this is where we want our bait to drift. And I was just trying to give him as much of advantage as I could because I wanted him to catch a fish. I didn't give a shit about catching a steelhead today. This was all about Andrew. So I get him set up just the way my dad would have done with me. And we start fishing. And we go about 2 hours, no fish, which is fine. It was a beautiful morning. We heard turkeys. We got to know each other. Andrew's actually a really cool guy, I was realizing. He actually went into the woods to take a pee. And when he came down, I saw him kneeling. And he was like grabbing soil and smelling it. And he was a big hunter. And he's just like, oh yeah, that's definitely deer pee. Like they were just here. And I was like, this is some Lord of the Rings Aragorn shit. Like I am on board. I love this dude. So weird. And we're just having like a great time, just shooting the shit on the river. It was a beautiful late October, early November morning. We weren't having any luck. About 3 hours go by. And I hear Andrew yell out, I think I have something. And I look. And I see the bobber is underwater. I see his rod tipping. So I drop my rod, grab the net. I coach him in, bringing in this steelhead. And it's a nice steelhead. It's about 22, 23 inches. Not a trophy steelhead, but I would take that steelhead any day. Any fisherman would. Just beautiful. And he brings it in great. We get it netted. It was hooked perfectly where it wasn't harmed. We kept it in the water. We brought it out once just to take a nice picture, and then Andrew let it go. And Andrew high-fived the fuck out of me. I mean, he was so excited, you guys. Like, this was his first steelhead. He couldn't believe how happy he was. In fact, he ended up recounting everything that had just happened, even though I had been standing there the whole time. Like, have you ever been that excited? That's what he did. That's why it's something I've done to my dad. So, like, he's just over the moon excited. And I'm thrilled. And we decided to keep fishing just a little bit longer. Maybe they're starting to turn on. And about 30 minutes goes by. It's about maybe 10:30 in the morning. I don't know. And we kind of look at each other and said, look, this was a great day. We have a lot to do, both of us. So why don't we call it a day? Great. I start packing up all of the gear. And Andrew goes up in the woods to take one more pee before we go to the car. So as I'm packing up, I hear Andrew say, Adam, do you have your phone? And I turn around and he's kneeling down. And I'm thinking to myself when I saw him kneeling, I'm like, man, this dude really loves deer pee. Like he is all about it. And I reach into my pocket and my phone is dead. And I believe the cause, even though I had half of a bar or whatever, the half of the battery, is it probably went into roaming. It was a bad phone down into the valley. It probably just sucked up all of the battery and it died. So I said, no, it's Dad. What's up, man? And he goes, well, I need an ambulance because I'm throwing up blood. And as soon as he said that, literally, as soon as he said it, he heaved a little, opened his mouth, and a waterfall of red came out. I have never seen someone turn the color he turned so fast. I'm a lifeguard. I was a camp director. I've seen some pretty gnarly injuries. This was unreal. And it wasn't like he was just throwing up when there was vomit with blood in it. Everything that came out of his mouth was crimson red. There is a huge, huge puddle of blood in front of him. He changes colors. I can tell he's going to faint. I drop my buckets. I run up into the woods. I guide him down to the bank. And I tell him everything's going to be okay, even though I didn't know that. He lays down. What do you do from someone that just threw up blood? Do you tie a tourniquet around their stomach? Like, I threw a bucket under his legs. I don't have a phone to call 911. I am kind of panicking, but there's just a moment of like, what would Dad do? Just stay calm. I look down the river, maybe 300, 400 yards. There's another guy fishing. And I yell at him, I need you to call an ambulance. And his response was, why? And I said, don't worry, I just need an ambulance now. And here was the kicker, is he went, like I saw him like God, ruining my Saturday morning. It's like he doesn't know this kid's like dying. So as soon as I realized that he's calling somebody, I kind of took a moment to like assess the situation. Andrew is no longer responding to me. He is just laying there. I tried talking to him a little, no response. And I'm 6'3", but I'm also 20 pounds. He is much shorter than me and way, way heavier. And I can see our car. It's like right there. But we're in a cold river. I can't just drag him across this 5.5 deep hole, and then I wouldn't be able to just bring him up over this very high edge, which was even taller than me. I would have to drag him up the river. And I'm just going through the worst case scenario, like how are we even going to get him to the ambulance when the ambulance gets here? And as soon as I'm about to really just like totally freak out, I hear him say, Adam, very quietly, but he said my name. And I look down the ground, and his eyes are closed. And I kneel down, and I'm like, what's up, buddy? I'm here. What can I do? And he goes, in my front right vest pocket is a little bit of weed. And I need you to get rid of that weed. I cannot get caught with that weed. And I was like, are you kidding me, Andrew? I'm not proud to admit this, but this is true. I literally thought we were gonna have like a touching Saving Private Ryan moment, like tell my mother I love her. He just wanted me to get rid of his ganja kush. And so I literally threw his one-hitter into the woods, like that was the top of our concerns. And he starts to kind of come to. The color does not come back, but he starts kind of waking up. And it turns out the reason he was so passionate about Obama and healthcare wasn't just because of Hannah, it's because of the rare liver condition that he also has, which I did not know, and he did not tell me, and if he did, it was in the car and I was not listening. So now I understand what's happening. He starts to sit up, and I said, Andrew, an ambulance has been called. We have to get you across the river. Do you think you can walk? And he said, yeah. He walks over on his own. By the time we get to our car, an ambulance is there with a park ranger. They were very, very sweet. Andrew got his cell phone out, called his mom, and his mom basically said, look, if you feel up to it, let's save the money from the ambulance, have Adam drive you down to Medina ER, and we'll see our own doctor there because the doctor knows, what's going on with you. So we wave off the ambulance. I drive him down. I'm still in my fishing waders and my boots. I am doing everything I can to just keep our conversation up as I'm driving down 71. I didn't want him to faint again or anything, but he seemed okay. And we're sitting in the ER, again, still in my waders, my boots, and we're just waiting on a doctor. Andrew's up. He's waiting for his parents to come. And there was a couple who was also sitting in the ER, and the guy looked at me and he went, "Did you catch anything?" And it's like, we're in an ER right now. Why are you joking? Like, I caught my friend's life, you dick. You know, like, God. So weird. But eventually Andrew's parents came, and they gave him a big hug, and they thanked me, and they said, just honestly drive Andrew's car back up to Lakewood, get your car and come back, and we'll worry about his car later, and thanks for being there, Adam, and everything. And Andrew seemed fine. And he ended up being fine, don't worry. But something, they've explained it to me, but there was something where his liver condition, it basically went into overdrive, and veins in his throat had burst open, and that's where the blood came from. He had to go into surgery. I think he was in ICU for 2 to 3 weeks, and then in the hospital recovering for another month. He is okay now. He has had a liver transplant. He is up and healthy. He looks great. We have not gone fishing again. But I'm really glad that I was able to have the experiences with my dad, who saved me in a lot of ruts and showed me how to catch fish. And I'm glad that I was able to give a great experience in some ways to Andrew too. That's my story. Thanks, guys. And that's the show. What do you guys say? Do we want to go steelhead fishing tomorrow? It's going to be a good morning for it.